Here we are, still in scene one of Act 3, and we are now on perhaps the most famous soliloquy written by man. Here we are, Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy. Remember that Polonius and Claudius now have this plan to spy on Hamlet. It is a little puzzling to some students, though, but the way this has to be staged is that even though Claudius and Polonius are spying on Hamlet, and even though Ophelia has been sent to meet with him, this speech, this soliloquy, is a soliloquy. None of the other characters hear it. So even though Ophelia, it's staged in different ways. Sometimes she's slightly off to the side of the stage and can't hear him. Sometimes Polonius and Claudius are put behind a tapestry, but nobody hears this. This is a true soliloquy, so keep that in mind. It's sometimes a little confusing because we know the plan is to spy on him, but they don't hear this part. All right? So, interestingly, we are back to the question that Hamlet started with his very first soliloquy, which was whether or not he wanted to live. If you remember that first soliloquy, it's the one where he says he just wishes that his too solid flesh would melt into a dew, and that he wishes he were no longer alive. And here again we have this very existential question, right? To be or not to be. Notice that it's to be. It's not to do, right? It's not a question about should I commit my revenge or not. It's a question about should I continue to exist? And here's how he further frames that question. He says, is it nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them? So what is the nobler thing to do? Notice that what's guiding him here is some sense of nobility. Another way in which we begin to see Hamlet as being morally idealistic. But he's here asking, what's the nobler thing to do? To suffer the pains of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against your fortune? And by that he means to kill yourself. So he imagines now to die as being to sleep, to end the heartache, to end the 1,000 natural shocks. The flesh is heir to, right? This is what it's like to live, is to be shocked and to be in pain. And so he says here, this is a consummation devoutly to be wished, right? We should wish for death. Again, we have the connection between to die and sleep. But now he says to sleep, perchance to dream. And that's where his mind takes him in a new direction when he thinks about the dreams. There's the rub, there's the conflict. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. So look at what we have there then. He's saying that he's worried about what happens in death, right? What dreams may come? What might we think about? And what we might think about must give us pause. We must reflect and hold off before we do something as drastic as suicide, because we need to know what dreams may come. Also, little aside here, this is the line where the musical collective This Mortal Coil took its name from. Beautiful name for a band, beautiful turn of phrase by Shakes here. I know this totally dates me, but those of you who've listened to some Euro pop from the 80s will know This Mortal Coil. Anyway, so Hamlet is telling us then why most people continue to live. They continue to live because they're afraid of the afterlife. They're afraid of what dreams may come. All right. So he goes on here and continues on that same theme, and uses continued metaphors about the undiscovered country. What is life after death? Right. We have this dread of what may happen after death. And then here he comes down to a really critical claim. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. So, if we've been wondering up until this point why Hamlet's been unable to execute his revenge, we now have a couple answers. One answer is his epistemic uncertainty, right? Which is why he's putting on this play, because he's not sure the ghost told him something truthful. But the second reason here is his conscience. His conscience is nagging at him. It's turning him into a coward. A brave hero wouldn't be panged by conscience in this way, at least in Hamlet's telling. Now he uses a really beautiful metaphor here. Excuse me, he says, the natural hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought. So what he's saying there is, when we're resolved, we have a native hue, we have a natural color. But when we think too much, our natural color becomes sicklied over and pale. So it's kind of like, the way you'd be ruddy-cheeked when you're resolved to do something. But then when you think about it too much, you become pale and frightened by it, sicklied over. Okay? So, and he explains, this is how enterprises of great pitch and moment, with this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Lose the name of action. Think about that phrase. He's basically saying this is how people lose their momentum to do something. And I'm going to pause right here because we have a prayer coming.
Good morning, Cubs.
Good morning indeed.
Wednesday, February